Cavendish and Rogers were two privateers who each captured a Manila galleon in 1587 and 1710 respectively. But what made the Manila galleon so special that a lot of people wanted to capture one back then? In this video, we'll explore what a Manila galleon is, its history, its parts, and how they function. First, what exactly is a galleon? Galleons are large, multi-deck sailing ships that use sails to move, unlike modern ships which use engines. They were widely used by Europeans as warships and armed cargo carriers from the 16th to 18th century. The size of galleons varied depending on their purpose. The British preferred smaller galleons for more mobility in battles, while Spain opted for larger galleons to transport more goods around the world and to carry more weapons. Spanish galleons also had thicker hulls to better withstand enemy cannon fires. A typical Spanish galleon was 30 to 35 meters long, but the larger Manila galleons were 40 to 50 meters long and could carry 2,000 tons of cargo, compared to the Atlantic galleons, which could only carry 500 to 1,000 tons. However, building a large Manila galleon required 2,000 trees and took 2 years to complete. Now, what exactly is a Manila galleon? The Manila galleon was also known as Lanao de China and Galleon de Acapulco. Almost all Manila galleons sailing the Pacific were built in the Philippines due to the 1679 decree requiring them to be constructed in such a country, funded by the Spanish crown, so they are technically considered Spanish galleons. The Manila galleon carried goods from Manila to Acapulco, Mexico every year. On its return trip, it would bring gold or silver, soldiers, and missionaries back to Manila with messages from Spain. The Spaniards in Manila heavily relied on the galleons from Acapulco, and when a galleon sank or was captured by pirates or privateers, it led to an economic depression. But did you know that many Filipinos, or Indios as they were called back then, sailed on Manila galleon? Later on, we'll discover what they might have seen inside the Manila galleon. Take note that in this video, we'll examine a medium-sized Manila galleon since the only difference between them is the size and the amount of cargo and weapons they could carry. Now, let's take a look at the important parts of a Manila galleon. Galleons were typically made from oak, mahogany, and other hardwoods. Let's start with the lowest deck, the hold. This part stores cargo such as Chinese silk, perfumes, jewelry, porcelain, cotton fabric from India, and exotic spices like cinnamon, clove, mace, and pepper. Barrels containing drinking water are also kept here. Beneath the cargo area are the bilge and ballast. The bilge collects water that enters the ship, and the ballast, made up of stones, helps stabilize the galleon. Above the hold, accessible via a staircase, is the Orlop deck. This deck houses the passenger quarters, which are small and only accommodate 2 people. At the rear of the ship is a room for valuable cargo, books, and documents. In the middle of the ship, on both sides, are the crew's quarters. There are no rooms here so there's no privacy. Their dining area is also nearby. However, the sleeping and dining spaces are often removed, and the crews sleep and eat on the floor. At the center is a cargo area containing flour, beer, and other food supplies. Next to this is the kitchen, which has a chimney extending to the upper deck to prevent smoke from filling the lower deck where people sleep. In front of the kitchen is another room for important cooking supplies. Using another staircase, we reach the lower gun deck. Here, the crew has a sleeping area next to a dining space, again without rooms. But beside them are large cannons used for protection against pirate ships or privateer galleons. However, in larger galleons, the cannons can take up the whole space, leaving no room for beds. Each cannon is placed in a window with a cover like this one. Ropes secure the cannons to prevent movement during sailing. Another rope controls the cannon's recoil when fired. This wooden piece is used to adjust the cannon's elevation. The bucket beside it holds water to extinguish any fire caused by the cannon fire. At the front is the lower part of the capstan, used to raise and lower anchors or assist with heavy cargo. More on this later. There is another room at the front for storing cargo. If we move to the rear, we find the officers' cabins, which could accommodate 2 people per cabin. At the very rear are 2 cannons, and between them is the tiller used to control the rudder. Some galleons had a whipstaff on the upper deck connected to the tiller. The whipstaff, controlled by the helmsman, serves as the galleon's steering wheel, as galleons didn't have steering wheels back then. Now, let's go to the upper gun deck using this staircase. Upon arrival, you'll immediately see 2 levers for 2 bilge pumps. These pipes extend from the lower gun deck to the hold where the bilge is. These are used to pump out the water accumulated in the bilge to prevent the galleon from sinking. In the middle of the deck is a small boat used to reach places inaccessible to the galleon. Larger galleons had 2 small boats. Cannons are also positioned on each side of the upper gun deck. At the rear is a room with 2 doors. Inside are smaller rooms for important people like the captain, admiral, master, or other significant individuals aboard the galleon. At the front is a large room used for dining or holding meetings for the important people on the galleon. Cannons are also stationed here. Above this room is the quarter deck, where the pilot or navigator, captain, and other officers stay to calculate the proper navigation of the galleon. Again, cannons are also present here. At the front is a spacious room that houses highly valuable items, including gold bullion and special stones. Above this is the poop deck. Because it is elevated, officers assigned to observe the galleon's maneuvering often stay here. It is well lit at night by a large lantern. Now, let's move to the front of the ship. Here, you'll find this bell used for communication with other galleons. It is also used as a signal for cruise ship changes and during emergencies. Near the small boat is the gear capstan, used to raise and lower anchors or heavy cargo similar to the lower capstan. They use these wooden levers to rotate the capstan. Many crew members are needed to turn the capstan both on the upper and lower capstan. These humps on the floor help prevent them from slipping while pushing. Raising and lowering anchors is simple. The anchor rope is tied to the capstan, then it is rotated, and as the rope tightens, the anchors are either lifted or lowered depending on the direction of the rotation. Cargo is loaded and unloaded in the middle of the ship. These covers are temporarily removed all the way down to the hold, and the cargo is carefully lowered using the capstan and a rope with a pulley system connected to the sails and masts. There's also a room at the front for cargo storage and crew quarters. Above it is the forecastle, where you could see the chimney from the kitchen on the Orlop deck, 2 anchors on each side, and of course, 2 cannons. Now, let's look at the important parts for maneuvering the galleon. The masts and sails, known as the foremast, mainmast, mizzenmast, and bowsprit. These are the foresails, mainsails, and mizzen sails, which are divided into 3: the top gallant, top, and course sails. This is a lantern-rigged mizzen, and at the front of the ship is the sprit sail. Galleons typically use 3 to 4 sails and masts. The sails and rigging ropes are made of Manila hemp. Without these sails and masts, the galleon wouldn't be able to sail, as these serve as its engine. At the front of the ship is the prow, where the toilets are located. There is no privacy here, as people could see you when you use the toilet. At the top of the masts is the crow's nest, used as lookout point. From here, the lookout could see far and wide to spot dangerous areas, other ships, and land using a telescope. Regarding the crew of the Manila Galleon, they typically consisted of Chinese, Mexicans, Spaniards, and Filipinos. The Filipinos or Indios held the lowest position, known as landsmen. But most of the crew were Filipinos because during the early years of the Manila Galleon trade, many foreign crew members died due to the long voyage, which lasted over 4 months, and due to the harsh conditions of the food and weather. With many crew members perishing, Spanish officials struggled to find replacements, so they had no choice but to recruit many Filipinos to replace the deceased. It was said that less than half the crew were Spaniards. The other Mexicans and Spaniards were prisoners forced to join the galleon as punishment. The Manila Galleon trade continued for 250 years until Mexican rebels took over Acapulco, causing the trade to cease in 1813. However, one galleon, the San Fernando, managed to slip through in 1815. And that's it. Later, in the 18th century, new major traders emerged in the world trade, including the US, Brazil, India, and China, with their products such as tea, opium, sugar, tobacco, coffee, and cotton.